The Nigerian Economic Summit Group, the NESG, released its macroeconomic outlook for 2021 titled 4 Priorities for the Nigerian Economy in 2021 and Beyond. The report states that COVID-19 tested the strength of the Nigerian economy and exposed its vulnerabilities. Now, the report also states that investment in critical sectors is what will get the Nigerian economy out of recession and on the path to high, sustained, and inclusive economic growth. Earlier, we spoke with Wilson Erumebor, senior economist with the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, where he shared his thoughts on the report.
If you look at the report and even the tweets, you would notice high and sustainable economic growth. And like you rightly pointed out, oil is important, even especially when you look at the short term. But again, you're right when you say oil got us out of the last recession. But also, oil got us into the recession, given the fact that the crude oil sector had been in recession. It had recorded consecutive negative growth, especially from 2015 leading into 2016. And basically, when the economy got out of the recession, that was the first time oil also recorded its positive growth. So yes, we are not leaving out crude oil, especially in the short term. But the key message here is that if we want an economic growth that delivers a reduction in unemployment and poverty, we must pay attention to the sectors that contribute to growth. The oil sector is, you have so many uncertainties. Before, last year, we've had cases where, revolutions or developments in the shale oil industry placed a cap on global oil prices. In going into the future, there's been lots of innovation in renewable energy. Cars are running on batteries. So for how long will, and all this will affect crude oil, in terms of its price and even output at some point. So for how long will a country like Nigeria keep relying on one single commodity to shape out economic outcomes? So what we're basically saying is that we need to move from that era and try to look at, other areas of the economy. And thankfully Nigeria is a blessed economy with lots of potential, so many untapped industries, and so we are saying, look, we need to attract investment into these critical areas so that Nigerians can feel the impact of economic growth. So we're looking at not just 2021, but of course the medium to long term.
Thank you so much for that. And Wilson, I want to stick with oil and gas. On our flagship morning show, we had the Director of Department of Petroleum Resources, Mr. Sarki Owalu, who revealed that the marginal bids that are taking place right now, Nigeria stands to, on a conservative basis, earn about $500 million just from the application fees and so on and so forth. That is equivalent to the Euro bond that we just redeemed, right? So despite all the talk of diversifying away from oil, it still forms the bulk of our revenues for budget support. So are we making any headway in terms of diversification in your view? Because there's still so much money to be made from it.
Yes, so diversification, a lot of times when you hear people talk about it, people often say that diversification away from crude oil. And I think, in context, diversification should be actually looking at how you can support other sectors in addition to crude oil. And also, there are so many economies that, have crude oil and they've not had, serious shocks simply because they were able to, boost up their savings, external reserves, monetary reserves, when oil prices are high. I think that's one area where we've missed it in Nigeria. But again, there are several metrics and indicators that you can use to measure whether we've made progress or not in terms of diversification. So if you look at government revenues, as at last year, January to December, you would notice when the minister presented, oil revenues accounted for about 39% of total revenue, which, if you look at history where we're coming from, yes, you can say it's a good development, especially when crude oil used to account for 70-60%. But again, it's basically because the oil sector was probably at its worst state, last year. We had cases where oil price declined to about $9 per barrel in April. So, so that in that area, you would say that if oil price keeps going up, it would, looking at 2021, already it's around, almost hit $55 per barrel. So that means that, its share in government revenue would keep increasing. If you then look at the export earnings, which is, very important, which not only looks at government, but looks at the economy in general. In the third quarter of 2020, crude oil accounted for 81% of what Nigeria earned, as export earnings. If you then add other oil-related products, you're talking about 93%. So it means the non-oil sector is just 7% of what we exported. And that's not a good indicator. Even worse still is, if you then look at the size of the economy and take away oil from it, so you have non-oil economy, non-oil GDP, and you look at non-oil exports, what's the share of non-oil GDP that we export to other countries? It's less than 1%. Shocking. In 2019, it was 2%. So 2% of our non-oil economy is what we export to other countries. Tells you that a lot needs to be done. Still on export, you look at manufacturing, which is basically production, accounts for just 4% of what we earn as export earnings. So it tells you that there's a lot that we need to do to get the economy to develop the critical sectors of the economy, and investment is what will drive that. And the government must be able to remove some of those bottlenecks that are affecting the development of some of these sectors.
Fantastic stuff. Very, very in-depth there, Wilson. All right, so can you clarify for viewers, when you talked about the need for investment, was it foreign direct investment or foreign portfolio investment, or a mix of both?
So we're looking at, we highlighted mainly FDIs, foreign direct investment, but then we also talked about local investment. If you look at the market, there's been so much liquidity in the last couple of months and years, if you like. Rates have come down significantly. At some point, rates were even negative. And if you look at the global economy, you'd see that we have about $17 trillion worth of capital invested in negative yielding assets. So that tells you basically that capital is not the problem, even within Nigeria and outside Nigeria. But the problem is, how stable is the environment? If you go to foreign investment, investors look at Nigeria and look at other countries. We often think, potential, but potential is not just enough, to be able to attract investment. Investment looks at risk, return, what is the level of insecurity, how are we, what is the level of the reserves, foreign exchange management. So these are critical issues that we are saying. So yes, we emphasize a lot more on FDI, which is very important in terms of technology transfer, in terms of employment, which is one key area that Nigeria has struggled with over the last few decades. So FDI, local investments, FPI as well.
Fantastic. Wilson, we've got less than a minute to go, running out of time. We just put up a chart from your report showing the drop-off from Q1 2020 to Q2. Look at that, 5.9 billion to 1.3. Very quickly, Wilson, how soon can we recover from this to get FDI back up? Very quickly.
Well, if you look at the last quarter, there's some array of hope in the fact that in the third quarter, we recorded increased improvement in FDI despite all the challenges. So it means that as long as we can get some of these reforms in place, issues relating to infrastructure, foreign exchange is one big concern, and the government gets to implement some sectoral reforms. Look, pick an industry. What's the direction for that industry? Where is the manufacturing headed? What are the opportunities within this sector? And what are the challenges that the government has committed to say in the next 5 to 10 years, we will implement XYZ policy to be able to attract investment into these sectors? And I think that's one of the highlights of the report. We are able to, set out 6 key industries and ICT that would drive recovery and be able to create jobs for millions of Nigerians.
All right, and that's going to do it for the Global Business Report. Do stay tuned to Arise News. From all of us, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for your company. I'm Rotus Odiri.